Hi, my name is Sean Walker and I'm a Principal Product Success Architect and part of the Ranger team here at ServiceNow. Today I'm going to be talking to you about normalization and part number suggestions. So in today's video we're going to talk about part number suggestions, talk about the content services configuration that's required, and talk about normalization suggestions, and then we'll get into a demo and show you how to accept or reject them. So part number suggestions are available only when there's been a match found between custom part numbers you've created in your instance and the content services or the content that's downloaded from ServiceNow. All the part number suggestion records can be found in the SAMP SW part number suggestion table. So you can take a look at the part number suggestions. You can find them by taking a look at the software asset workspace right on the activity center. You can see it'll say you've got 8 new part number suggestions found in this case, which will drill into those part number suggestions you see on the screen. So in order to have this work well for your environment, what you're going to want to make sure you do is make sure that you're opted into the content services, and specifically you want to make sure that the option to for part numbers and discovery maps is enabled, because that's what's going to upload all of your custom part numbers and your custom discovery maps, etc., to the ServiceNow content team for review. So what'll happen is they'll review those custom part numbers. They'll say, okay, yes, this is a legitimate custom part number. Let's add this to our content library. And that again will come back down on your weekly download of content. And then there's a job that will run and compare your custom part numbers against the content to see if anything's been added to the content. And when it has, what happens, that's when you get those part number suggestions. So that's something definitely to keep in mind, is to make sure that this is enabled. Also, what you will find is normalization suggestions. Those are a little bit different than part number suggestions. But basically, normalization suggestions are created for those discovery models where the values are different than what's in our content library. So you're going to have the option of reviewing these. So when you go ahead and you manually normalize a discovery model because it wasn't in the content library, and you've gone ahead and manually normalized it, what's going to happen again is there's a job that's going to look at those manually normalized discovery models and compare it against the content. And if something new has been added, it's not just going to automatically replace it for you. It's going to give you these normalization suggestions. So again, making sure you opt into that content service so all your manually normalized discovery models are uploaded for our team to review, to continue expanding our content library and have that come back down into your instance is a good thing. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to jump into a demo and show you how to resolve these normalization suggestions and part number suggestions. Okay, so now I'm logged into a Washington, D.C. release of ServiceNow, and I've navigated to the software asset workspace. So if you remember from the presentation, I showed the activity center section. So that's right here on the overview page. You can actually see these really helpful alerts, and here's where you can find some information about the health of your instance. But more specifically today, we're looking at these part number suggestions we may have, and also the normalization suggestions that might be in your instance. So we can access them by just simply clicking on them here, and that will take us to that section. Or you can always go into your license operations view and you scroll down here. You can see you've got your part number suggestions and normalization suggestions under this content suggestions section. So what I'm going to do now is take you through, what do I do with these? What does this mean? So I'm going to go ahead and click on this first one here on the part number suggestion. And what it's telling me is that I have this custom part number in my environment. So at some point in time, someone, either myself or somebody else on my SAM team, has created a custom part because one didn't exist in the system. And we can see that that custom part is tied to this entitlement definition, but there's no license type specified for it, and there's no license metric specified for this existing custom part. Now what it's saying is, hey, we've gone ahead and we've added this part number to our content. So what you're seeing here is what's in our content library. So it's saying, again, the part number is exactly the same, but our content team knows a little bit more about this product now that they've done their research. We know it should be tied to this discovery map instead. We know that the license type's perpetual, per user, the publisher is Microsoft, product version and edition, right? So we know all this information that should be associated with this particular part number. So I can either choose to accept it or reject it. So it's going to be important that you understand what you've purchased and what those rights are, etc., and whether you want to accept or reject this particular suggestion. So in this case, I'm going to go ahead and accept this, and that's going to go ahead and update my system to the right values so that when I'm using this part number with my entitlements, it's going to be then associated to the right DMAP with the right license type, etc. So that's how you go ahead and you resolve the custom part number suggestions. So I'd want to go through each and every one of these and actually decide whether or not I want to accept or reject them. So again, it's pretty important you understand if they're tied to entitlements, etc., and if that's going to have an impact. So you might want to consider doing this in one of your sub-prod instances just to make sure that they won't adversely affect any of your entitlements that you have configured with these part numbers. Because again, these DMAPs change, right? And in which case you can see here, most of them are changing. So you want to make sure, like this one's not, but these ones all are. So you want to make sure there's no impact to your entitlements. And now let's take a look at the normalization suggestions. So again, it's a little bit different than the part number suggestions. What the normalization suggestions are doing is they are comparing what you have manually normalized in your environment. So at some point in time, maybe I've gone through and I'm doing my SQL Server compliance position, and I found this discovery model and I had to manually normalize it because it was not normalized. So we can take a look at this particular discovery model, and I can see here that its status is manually normalized. And I probably normalized it to version 2019 because it wasn't discovering anything. So this is something I've done in the past to this particular discovery model. So if I come back to the suggestion here, we can see what it's going to do is it's going to put in, the suggested publisher, product, version, and here's what it's talking about changing. It's adding the edition and the platform and the language. So all this information is going to be added to the discovery model because this is what's in our content today, right? So again, our content team reviewed the manually normalized stuff, said, okay, yeah, we know what this is, but we also want to add these other values. So what you're asking here is, do I want to accept these new values being added to this discovery model, yes or no? And that's important, again, for you to understand. In this case, yes, I do, because the version's not changing, but the additions here, which is great. I want to know that addition, especially for SQL Server. So I'm going to go ahead and accept this particular normalization session, and I can hop back over here to the discovery model, and you see what's happened to this discovery model. It's now gone from manually normalized to normalized, and it's gone ahead and it's added any additional information, right? So it's added that edition, platform, version, etc. So that's a quick overview on your normalization suggestions. So I do highly recommend you keep an eye on your activity center and you keep an eye on these normalization suggestions and part number suggestions to help you get your instance back to what's provided from the content services and have them maintain these going forward when it's available. So in today's video, we talked about part numbers and normalization suggestions, and then we talked about how the content services configuration, you should really make sure that that's configured so that that data can go up to our team for review. Then we went into an instance and I kind of walked through a demo on how to locate those part number suggestions and normalization suggestions, and then how to go through each one and resolve them. For more information on this subject, you can go to the ServiceNow product documentation site, and there's a couple of good sections. One is view publisher part number suggestions in Workspace, and the other is view normalization suggestions in Workspace. You can also go to our YouTube ServiceNow community, and we've got a playlist out there called Ask a Ranger, and there's a lot of good information in there, especially the one about creating custom part numbers and custom software products, right? That could talk about a lot of those part number suggestions, right, are going to come based off those custom part numbers you may have created in your instance. So thank you for your time. I hope you enjoyed this video, and I'll talk to you in the next one.